Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you share with us, strip away all the noise, and really try to get to the core of what you need to know.
And today, we're looking at something that affects how millions of people get around.
Exactly. We're focusing on the future of movement in England, specifically active travel. So that's walking, cycling, and also, importantly, wheeling.
Right, which covers things like wheelchairs and mobility scooters. It's a really inclusive term.
It is. Now, our sources are all sort of circling around a huge new financial announcement. We're talking hundreds of millions of pounds for this kind of infrastructure.
The big headline number.
A very big number. But the mission for this deep dive isn't just to read that number back to you. We need to get a handle on the scale of this new money, but also, place it in the context of the UK's wider transport strategy, which has been, well, inconsistent.
To put it mildly. And I think that's the central tension in all of this, isn't it? You have the body in charge, Active Travel England ATE, led by Chris Boardman.
The former Olympic cyclist, yeah.
That's him. And you see their ambition just crashing up against this history of financial instability. It's a real tug of war.
So let's start with the money. What's the foundational figure we're working with?
Okay, so the government is putting up £626 million. That's for active travel in England, but specifically outside of London.
Right, and this isn't just a one-off payment.
No, and that's key. It's being framed as a stable, multi-year commitment. And the goal is pretty ambitious, to create 500 miles of new, high-quality routes for walking and cycling.
Okay, so $626 million for 500 miles, that's the stake in the ground.
That's our benchmark for everything else we're about to discuss.
Okay, so let's unpack the vision then, because the language coming out of AEE, it's not just technical jargon, it's actually quite visionary. They're not just talking about laying down asphalt. Chris Boardman said the core aim is to, and I'm quoting here, give people more everyday choice in how they get around by creating safe, accessible, and welcoming streets.
Which sounds great.
Yeah.
It's about choice.
It is. And here's the bit that I think really gets to the social impact. He talks about creating communities where, parents feel confident letting children travel independently, and where older people can reach local shops with ease. I mean, that's a fundamentally human goal, isn't it? It's about building life back into our streets.
I agree. The rhetoric is spot on. It's exactly what people want to hear. But rhetoric is cheap. We have to ask the hard question. Does the sheer scale, and more importantly, the structure of this £600 million actually match that goal? Or is it just a transport budget wearing a friendly disguise?
So you're saying the problem isn't the vision, it's the execution.
Well, the challenge is that this money is being spent against a backdrop of deep systemic inconsistency. The critics say this has plagued the sector for years. The core problem hasn't always been a lack of money, but a lack of reliable money.
And until that's fixed.
Until that stability is there, that vision of kids cycling to school and seniors walking to the shops, it just risks staying a vision.
And that leads us right to the critics. And it's important to say, these aren't just, fringe voices. We're talking about a coalition of 50 organizations.
Yeah, these are the heavy hitters.
They really are. Major players in transport, health. You've got British Cycling, Cycling UK. And they're all raising a massive red flag about the government's overall strategy.
So what's their core demand?
They put it in a letter to the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander. And they basically said, look, the $626 million is nice, but we need to move from just good intentions to a clear, long-term national plan, something you can actually deliver.
Something comparable to other big transport projects, like rail or major roads.
Exactly.
And what's so fascinating is they're not just screaming for more cash, they're demanding a change in how it's all governed. They're calling out what they term the piecemeal approach.
Right. What does that mean in practice?
Well, imagine you're trying to build a new railway line, but every year, the government might just suddenly decide to have your budget. And you're only allowed to build, say, 3 random kilometers of track in completely disconnected places. That's the piecemeal approach. It's short-term, stop-start funding. It doesn't have clear national targets. And critically, it fails to connect the dots on the ground.
And that user experience is everything here. Because if you look at what the critics are actually asking for, it's not just some abstract strategy document.
No, it's about joined-up roads.
Joined-up routes to key destinations. They want infrastructure that reliably gets you from your house to the hospital or to school or the train station.
Because if the cycle lanes just appear for 100 meters and then vanish,
They're useless. They're useless for that everyday utility cycling that Boardman was talking about. So this whole debate about piecemeal funding, it comes down to whether you can actually cycle your kid to school safely or if you're just forced back into your car.
And that critique gets so much more weight when you look at the history here. I'm talking about the Public Accounts Committee, the PAPC report from November 2023.
Right, the government's own watchdog.
Exactly. And it's a very sober and, frankly, a pretty damning look at what's happened before.
The past reported, and I'm quoting again, disappointingly slow progress towards the government's own targets. But here is the killer finding that you, listening, really need to hear. The impact of all the previous spending was deemed unclear.
Let's just pause on that for a second. Unclear. We're talking about 2.3 billion pounds spent between 2016 and 2021.
Wow.
And that includes 2 billion pounds of emergency funding during the pandemic. So to spend that much public money and have a major watchdog like the Passkey turn around and say, we're not sure what you got for it, that is catastrophic.
It suggests a total failure of evaluation.
A complete failure. They couldn't figure out what worked and what was just, money down the drain.
And as if that wasn't unstable enough, there was the cut. The Treasury in March 2023 just slashed 233 million pounds from the active travel budget. Gone. And the Piacara report specifically said that this cut would hurt the chances of meeting the targets. It's a self-inflicted wound. The result on the ground was just chaos for local councils.
Of course. They're trying to plan these huge long-term projects.
But they had no certainty on funding. They were getting late notice about allocations, and when the money did arrive, they had to spend it in these really short windows.
Which forces them to do rushed, badly planned schemes. It's like trying to train for a marathon by only ever doing 100-meter sprints. You just can't build complex integrated networks when the Treasury can pull £250 million out from under you at a moment's notice.
This instability didn't just end with a bad report, though. It went to court.
Yeah, this is a huge point.
The Court of Appeal actually ruled that the Treasury's funding cut, that $233 million, was unlawful.
Not just bad policy. Unlawful.
Unlawful. And that ruling is so powerful because it gives legal force to the very thing the critics were worried about. It legally underlined the government's short-termism. It's not just a disagreement anymore. It was judged to be a legally flawed way of funding public infrastructure.
So when you connect that whole chaotic history to this new $600 million, you see the challenge. Even with the best intentions, the fundamental structure for this spending has been, deeply unreliable.
So if just throwing money at the problem has such a poor track record, how does Active Travel England make sure councils are even ready to spend this new money properly?
Well, that's where their internal scorecard comes in. It's called the Active Travel Capability Ratings. They are published alongside the new funding. It's basically 80's way of judging if a local authority can actually deliver.
Okay, so this is the acid test.
It really is. The scale runs from level 0, which is simple, no plan, all the way up to level 4.
And what's level 4? The gold standard.
Level 4 is the absolute utopia. The definition is an established culture of active travel with successive increases in walking, wheeling, and cycling. It's underpinned by a dense integrated network. Basically, it's a seamless, thriving system.
Okay, so let's look at the reality check. How are councils actually doing? There's some good news.
Some, yes.
9 councils improved their ranking this year. And big picture, no local authority is at level 0 anymore. So everyone has at least some kind of plan.
Which is progress.
It is. But the ceiling is the problem. Despite all that previous investment, not a single council in England has reached level 4.
Nobody's in utopia yet.
Not even close. Highest grade anyone has is level 3, and that's defined as very strong local leadership and a significant network in place.
If you look at the raw numbers, only 11 out of 80 local authorities are even at that level, just 11.
Wow.
The fact that level 4 is still unattainable for everyone it's really significant. It tells you that what 8-Need itself defines as a successful integrated culture of active travel is still out of reach for every single council.
And you'd have to assume that's because of the historical instability we've just talked about.
It has to be. You can't build that dense integrated network if you're constantly dealing with funding cuts and short-term deadlines. The new money is flowing, which is great, but until the policy delivers consistency, that top grade is just going to remain an aspiration.
And that really frames the core tension of this entire deep dive, doesn't it? So for you listening, here's the full picture. On one side, you have a huge new multi-year investment, £626 million, 500 miles of routes. an ambitious leader.
A very positive story.
A very positive story. But on the other side, you have this recent history of piecemeal funding, a watchdog report saying billions were spent with unclear impact.
And a court ruling that literally called the government's approach unlawful.
Right. And those capability ratings are the final barometer for all this. We know level 4 is the goal, an established culture. But only 11 councils are even sniffing at the door at level 3.
A tiny fraction.
So the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Does the promised stability of this new funding, combined with the pressure from all those organizations and the threat of legal action, does that provide enough force for those 11 frontrunners to finally make the jump to level 4?
Because the real success here won't just be measured in miles of tarmac.
No. It'll be measured in how many councils finally escape that chaotic stop-start cycle and achieve that culture of stability. Because only then can that ambition of building life back into our streets actually happen.
And that is something for you to track as this latest investment rolls out.
Thank you for sharing your sources with us and letting us take this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.